But Danny, thank you for joining us today. I know I've known you since our time kind of hanging around each other at Hayward here and there
Yeah,
for big meets, and
yeah.
then now as we're both in Portland. But I'm glad to have the chance to meet with you. And why don't you just go ahead and start by introducing yourself and your extremely long title with Adidas.
Okay, yeah. As you might have heard, my name's Danny Lopez. I am the global senior sports marketing manager for Adidas Running and Track and Field. So basically, it means I'm under a global structure. My boss sits in Amsterdam, which is our global headquarters for sports marketing. Our main headquarters our world headquarters is in Herzogenaurach, Germany, but I am based here in Portland. Reason being is I manage all of the U.S. For our global team. Been with the company going on 17 years now. As 17 years working, 6 years of that as an athlete. So it's been a while with the brand.
About a quarter of a century.
Yeah, crazy. It goes by fast too.
So we'll just kind of start with some background on you as a runner, and then as I said earlier, I wanted to transition more into talking a little bit about how running has got you into your career. But so starting at the beginning, you grew up in Arizona, and you had some military goals initially, and that didn't pan out the way you wanted. So kind of explain how that proceeded to lead to new goals.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, I grew up in a small town in Arizona. It's called Fort Huachuca. It's an army base where if anybody's a history buff, where the original Buffalo Soldiers were for the cavalry. Growing up on a military base and with going to high school and growing up with friends, the majority of the people that graduated either went into the military or stayed in town. One, there was no way I was going to stay in town. It was just too small for me. So my goal was to follow my father's footsteps and my brothers and join the military. Unfortunately, I'm blind in one eye. That was from birth. And with that came the restrictions of no military service because of as they call it, a disability. My other brother, my father and my brothers are also law enforcement. So that was going to be my next option. Again, of course, there's some limitations there as well. So I took up running. When you go through school and when people start realizing that there's this certain disability of being blind, there's so many things that could happen. I only have 50% of my vision, basically. So I wasn't playing football. I couldn't play basketball. I couldn't do any of the contact sports. I could have, but it was more of a risk that my family wasn't willing to take. And I didn't have much of a choice at first. So I chose running. And for me, not taking the military route to get out of my hometown, which, as kids, we always see things different. I had grew up in a small town. I wanted to get out and see things bigger, but now, I would move there in a heartbeat. But at that point, wanting to get out, I couldn't take those routes. So my other option was to get into college. And I will say this now, I wasn't the best student in high school. And it wasn't because I couldn't do it. It's because I didn't want to do it. And that's a big difference, I think, in what we should realize with some young men and women today is not all of them they're not all bad students. They sometimes just don't want to do it, or they don't find that interest. So I didn't know what I was going to do. So I started running. I was okay. I think, Matt, you and I talked about it. I wasn't. I didn't win a state title. I was second my junior and senior year. I lost both titles in cross country and track, and didn't have a lot of fast times. So going to college didn't seem like an option to me, because financially there's no way we could afford to have five sisters and two brothers that I grew up with in a large family. So So it didn't seem like it was going to be an option. Fortunately, I was offered a scholarship to go to a junior college, which I jumped at the chance. And for those of you that are track and field distance buffs, you may know who George Young is. George Young was the first American four-time Olympian, and a steeplechaser, and silver medalist in Mexico City, only because he fell. I think he could have won the gold. But he was at a junior college in Arizona. Not a lot of people knew about it, Central Arizona College. And I had an option to go there. And at that time, it wasn't scholarship. You had partial scholarships. Nobody had a full scholarship. So you had your education paid for, but you also had to work 2,000 hours a week on the grounds doing different jobs to make up for the rest of the money. So I was cleaning up the office or cleaning up the grounds, picking up trash on the weekends before and after practice to make up for my time, so that I could have my college paid for. So that was the only way I was going to go. Obviously, things took a nice turn there, because I think, when I go back and think about high school and how I didn't win state, I didn't I didn't have a lot of fast times. And I felt like I worked hard, but I didn't work as hard as I could have. George was very structured. He was very, he had a mentality. Four-time Olympian, silver medalist. He was tough. Also had a military background. So when it came to workouts with him, he was having me do things I never thought I could do. So I went from 1,600 meters. I was running 4:21, which it was not even close to what the guys were running at the time, to a 4:10 to a 4-minute mile within a year under his tutelage. And then my first outing at the national championships. Again, it's junior college, but when it came to cross country, I'll drop a few names that you may not know: William Musioki, Michael Mutois, Julius Karaoke, who was the '88 gold medalist in the steeplechase, the world record holder. Those are the guys I had to race with in a junior college. And so the level of competition was as high, if not higher in some cases, than most NCAA Division I schools at the time. So that just helped me excel in what I wanted to do. The first year I ended up winning the NCAA and JCAA steeplechase championships. So I won the steeplechase, and the interesting part of it is the main track meet was at a huge, beautiful high school stadium, but they didn't have a steeplechase pit because they didn't run steeplechase in high school. So I had to go to a junior college with about 4 people, and that included the officials and watching the race. So I won the national championship, had to jump in a car, drive to the stadium, and as soon as I got to the stadium, I had about 5 minutes to warm up before I had to jump in the 5,000. And the 5,000 I got during the 5,000. This was in Odessa, Texas. They had a hurricane or a tornado warning, so everything got dead calm while we were racing, and the stadium kind of cleared. We kept going, and I ended up second in there. So it was a pretty good day for me. The next year, it happened again where I won the national title, and then got recruited by many schools to go to get a university degree, which again, something I never thought I would do. So I ended up getting offers from Stanford, Brown, Duke, Oregon, Arizona, NAU, and quite a few schools. And going through the process, Arkansas was another big one. But my entire time going through the recruiting process, I knew I wanted to go to Oregon. And my reason for that was Bill Dellinger was there. Dellinger also very close with George Young. Best friends, 3 Olympic teams together, and then they constantly visit each other, throughout the year. So my goal was to head up to Oregon, and I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go there. So that kind of paved the way for me to, for my running career and academic. I think the one important thing is at a junior college was with George Young. He was very strong about academics first, athletics second. if you couldn't get those grades up, even if they deemed you eligible, it was his call. If you got a B when he thought you should have had an A, you don't run. That was just the way he was, and that has helped me in who I am today, and what my work ethic is like today, based on a lot of that. So it kind of paved the way for that. You know, and at Oregon, at Oregon, you know, I never won a national championship. I was second at the NCAA's. I lost by thousandths of a second to Mark Krogan in 1990. It just came down to a lean. He just had a little more gas than I did. And then the next year, or that was the first year I fell.
That's where Jeff, me, and you are so alike. We've all fallen in the steeplechase at kind of big moments.
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, you know, and I'm gonna take a step back now. That's very, very funny, because, you know, I'm blind in one eye. I went to a junior college and I decided to run the steeplechase. Well, if any of you guys have ever patched over an eye and tried to jump over things and try and use your depth perception, which you don't have, and your peripheral vision, which you're severely lacking, give it a try. So it's funny,
because it will not be a coaching technique I employ.
So because my first 6 races at Oregon, or at my junior college, I actually fell. I hit the barrier and fell. And George was like, I don't know that this event is for you. That, you know, I tried to tell you in cross country that you can't see it as well, or this and that. And I said, no, I'm fine. Because I was still finishing and still placing. I said, no, I'm fine. I said, I'll learn to adapt. And you do. You learn to adapt. I ended up winning nationals that year against some of the best Kenyans in the world at the time. So, you know, it's funny, and then I hadn't fallen again until I fell off the NCAA's when I hit that barrier, and ended up 11th when I was in 3rd, and then I came back the next year to get second to Krogan by 1,000ths of a second, and that kind of helped my career afterwards, because at that point, you know, you're second at NCAA's, and obviously this is going to go into the field that I'm in now. But you have athletes, you have agents and things that are looking at you. You have shoe companies that are interested, you know, and it was never about money for me. It was more about just doing what I love to do. And so I jumped on with Mizuno right out of college, and they were willing to just give me product. So I was receiving product from Mizuno. That's it, handshake deal. They could have walked away at any time. I was working at a company called Sport Hill down in Eugene, and I was working there full time. Well, I'd say from 9 to about 4, because I'd get out. He'd let me off for practice. So I'd get up at 5:30, do my runs, go to the office, work in his customer service and shipping and receiving. He'd let me go for practice. I'd go with Bill and Brad and a couple of other fine young men of Oregon, and run practice. From there, I'd drive to Springfield and work as a cashier at Texaco gas station. So that was my second full-time job. And on the way home, at about midnight or 1 o'clock, I would stop off at an office building, meet up with a gentleman there, and he would give me my janitorial assignments for the night. So I would do about 2 hours of cleaning bathrooms, floors, or whatever it took, because I wasn't making any money. It was, you know, as an athlete, I was just given an opportunity to get product and to pursue a dream of mine. So I worked hard in other areas to do that. That continued on for all of 91. And I was approached by my manager at the time. His name's Ray Flynn. Some of you may know him, one of the greatest milers ever from Ireland. He was my manager, and he says, "Hey, I've got an opportunity for you. Adidas has offered $3,000 a year, it's a stipend plus product and travel." He said, "Right now, Mizuno's not giving you anything. They're just giving you product, and it's a handshake." And I said, you know, at that point, yeah, that'll allow me to quit one job. And then I can just work the others and continue how I'm doing. Things are going well, and I'm able to train, you know, and made a lot of sacrifices for that. And so, I signed the contract 2 days before the Olympic trials. Mizuno was very upset. I show up at the trials, had a really bad year in 91, so I wasn't even expected to make the final at the 92 Olympic trials. And so I show up, I get through the first round pretty easily. These are the days where we had to run 3 rounds. We had to run the quarterfinal, had a day off, and you run the semi, have a day off, and then you run the final. It's not like today where you run one, have a couple of days off, run the next, and then you're in. So we had 3 races we had to run. And so I did the second one. I ended up winning my heat, so I know I'm automatically in the final. Now it comes to where there's probably 10 of us out of the 16 on the playing field that can make that Olympic team. I was called out at Track and Field News as the dark horse to make the final, so nobody was expecting me to even be anywhere near the front. But I had a heart-to-heart with George Young before that, and one of the things I told him was that I was going to be on the Olympic team, and nothing was going to stop. Did all the work for it. I know what I need to do, and I was going to be on the team. And you know, Matt and I talked a little bit about this when we spoke earlier. As an athlete, at certain levels, there's a sense of confidence you have to have. Some call it arrogance. Some are going to, say you're cocky, but it's not it. It's a confidence, and you don't have it, and that's what makes a champion. You have to believe in yourself, because there's a lot of others that won't believe in you. And you got to believe in yourself and believe in what you can do. And I knew I was going to make that team. And I told George that several days before. So we went out. We ran as hard as we could. We ran. I think we all finished within thousandths of a second of each other. So Brian Deemer won the championship, and he ran 8:15.97. Mark Krogan was second in 8:16.87. I was third in 8:16.88. And then Tom Nohilly was fourth in 8:16.9. That's how close we were, and it's just that much. And as we know in the system here in the U.S., the top 3 go in one race, and that's it. Nobody's chosen. Had they decided to choose people, even if I'd finished third, I probably wouldn't have gone. I didn't have the times before that to back me up. I ended up running 8:16.88, like I said, and I was 34-second overall PR from the year. But that's what it took to get it, and I signed on with it. It's funny because I had the contract with Adidas at $3,000 that I signed just so I could quit one job and work. The minute I crossed that finish line and I came out of drug testing, my father, my agent, and my manager for Adidas were there. He handed me a contract. He ripped up the old one. He said, "Here you go. Now you can quit all your jobs." So that's when I came, in my opinion, that's when I became the professional athlete. I had the contract, I had a stipend, I didn't have to work, I could train, and I can focus on the next 4-year cycle. So I continued that for 6 years with the brand. And it's made me a loyal, as you can see, it's made me a very loyal person to the brand. They've taken care of me when I was at my low, and I believe in that. So that that was basically the start of everything. There's a time frame in there when I retired and then came back into the industry of about 10 plus years, where I was just completely checked out.
Right before we get into that, something else that you had mentioned to me that you started hinting at here was your love for running, and that like extreme motivation you had, and you went from some inherent laziness to the structure with George Young, to following that real drive to, I want to get into college, I want to continue running, to I'm working 3 jobs to support my running habit, which parallels somehow to college athletes and their need to do high academic course load and high running load. And then just that drive you got to get to the Olympics. And then once you got to the Olympics, you didn't have that next plan. You kind of had accomplished that big end goal for yourself. And then how that kind of translated to 4 years after that, the next 4-year cycle, not having the love the same way. So if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good point. I mean, you work at such a high level for so long, and Some people can do it longer than others. It just varies. And I got to a point, I guess we'll go back to the Olympics. My goal was to make the Olympic team. My goal should have been to make that final, because I made the Olympic team. I didn't make it into the final at all. I got through the semifinals. But you talk about visualization and things like that, which I think it really does work. You obviously put the work in, but you also visualize where you're going to be and what you want to do. But it works both ways. I mean, I talked myself out of that when it came to the final, because I was satisfied with making the team, and I should have been satisfied with trying to get a medal. And then you work so hard, you work so long. It comes to a time where I got tired of it. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to get away from it all. So going into that last cycle, heading into '96, I'd been dealing with an injury from '93 that I wasn't getting treated. I wasn't seeing anybody about it. Finally, it was starting to catch up to me. It was the bursa sac in my heel, and every time it filled up and got swollen, I would go see Dr. James, and he would stick a big needle in there. He'd suck everything out, he'd shoot me up some cortisone, and let me go. So I just dealt with the pain, and I dealt with that feeling for 3 years, until it came down to the week before the Prefontaine Classic. And I had run pre before, and had some good races there. I actually paced a mile from there where they had 11 guys go under 4. So I've had some good experiences there. So I was really amped about getting ready for pre and running the steeple. And I went down on the track doing my last 200 with Dillinger. I collapsed on the track with my foot, just felt like it was going to explode. And Dr. James just happened to be at the track doing one of his track club workouts. He saw it, he looked at my foot, he got me into surgery the next day, where they had to remove the bursa sac and they had to shave the bone to relieve some of the pressure and do some things like that, which and had to go into my Achilles, where I had some scar tissue from a lot of the compensation. So that right there put me out for the Olympic trials that year. There was no way. At that point, I was relieved, I guess, to say, because I didn't want to continue on. That was one of those things where I put in all that work, and I'm okay with that. It was a tough decision, but I was okay with that. So I as soon as I got my cast off, I jumped in a car. I called my agent, told him I was done. He called Adidas and said, he's retired, he's done. And I drove. I drove from Eugene, Oregon to Camp Pendleton, where my sister was in California, 22 hours straight, showed up at her front door and never looked back. But those are the kind of things, that kind of set a whole new thing for me for the next 10 plus years, where, I was out of it. I didn't have that love for it anymore. And I stayed away, and I just did different things. I explored a different side of who I was. And I'm fortunate enough that I had the opportunity to come back, because this is who I am. I don't run as much anymore. I do run, but I support it 100%. So there was that definite lapse there. I was.
So what have you, even though you had some time away there, I think you shared with me that some of the relationships that you kind of cultivated over the years were ultimately what helped you get back into or to this position, and now have grown with the company. Just
Absolutely.
kind of share some of what the relationships you've had and the experiences you've had that have led to now where you're at.
Yeah, that's huge. That's important. I think one of the things we do, as we should be doing, and we do as athletes, is you're meeting people from all over the world, and from all different backgrounds, all different cultures, and I think it's important to develop those relationships. And I'm a relationships guy anyway. That's what my job is at Adidas now. We can go into that later, but to me, it's about relationships, about getting to know people. It's about meeting new people. I love to meet new people every day. because you never know where it's going to end. You know, you could be helping somebody and not know it, and they could help you in so many ways that you didn't know. So the relationships are key. I was fortunate enough to develop quite a few while I was an athlete, many of whom are owners of running stores, or are coaches, or work in athletics departments, or in the footwear industry as a whole. Um, and those relationships came from all over. Right? You know, as an athlete traveling all over the world, you meet people and you develop this friendship because you have that same thing in common. We have the same goals. And there's even some now that I haven't seen in 20 years that I could call up. If I was to go down to Brazil, I could call up and I could have a place to stay. You know, and I have you know, that network just grows from there as you start to grow in life, and that's hugely important. Um, you know, when I was away from running, I was actually in Las Vegas, working for Enterprise Car Sales. I was in the accounting department for Enterprise Car Sales when I went out one weekend to a road race, only because it was close to my house, and I thought, you know, I'm bored. I'm going to go see if they need help at the water station, or if they need, you know, or you know, handing out water. I don't care. I got to give back in some way. And mind you, for almost 10 years, I hadn't even thought about running. And so I go out there, and um, a group of young men come running by, and one of the kids asked if I had ever been a runner. And I said, yeah. I said, I used to run. And they said, well, you look familiar. He somehow knew who I was, asked me to come and hang out with the team and speak with the team. And I did that. And that right there triggered it. It's like, okay, maybe there's something there. And so I had received a call from Jim Hill. Actually, he was at Sport Hill, one of my bosses, and he ran at Oregon as well. I think he had the 10,000 meter record for a while. No, he had the cross country record over at the regionals. But of course, they've changed that course. So he was obviously a very solid runner. He calls me up and he asked about me coming back to work for him, and I had originally said that I would consider it. And then my bosses at Enterprise were like, no, we're going to give you this much more money to stay. So I stayed. 3 months later, I get a call from the University of Oregon. And it was Martin Smith, who was the coach at the time, and he had asked if I would be his director of operations. So for me, that was just a way of getting back into an industry that I loved, and a sport that I love and understand. So I got the call, and I moved up to Eugene and was the director of operations at track and field for about 4 years. The only thing that got me out of it for about 2 years, well, I thought I was going to be out of it for 2 years, was I followed the young lady who's now my wife down to San Diego, where she was going to school. And I wasn't going to miss out on that opportunity. So I moved down to San Diego, and then I started at San Diego State University. Again, this goes back to relationships. Because I went down, when I left Oregon, I went down to San Diego without a job. And I spoke to our compliance director at the University of Oregon, and I asked him, I said, listen, I need to get a job. I'm going to be down here. I don't know what I'm going to do. The person at San Diego State hiring for the position used to be at the University of Arizona, and she was a heptathlete for them. Knew who I was because we competed against each other at one stage, or we at the schools didn't. We met each other through there. They hired me on the spot without even an interview. So it was like, okay, all right. So now I'm okay. And then of course, 2 years later, I get another call from a good friend of mine in Washington, whose sister's best friend was hiring for a job at Adidas. He asked me if I would be interested. I call her up. Turned out I had met her 2 years before moving to San Diego at a football game. And she said, yeah, I remember who you are. Job's yours if you want it. So that's what got me back at Adidas. And again, it was just about the whole relationship side of it, and building those relationships and keeping them. And, you know, she's at Nike now. We talk all the time. You know, it's when you have something in common, you meet so many people, and you have so many interests that you cultivate these relationships, and they go so far. When coming back to Adidas, I did event marketing for 2 years in basketball, and during that time, the director for sports marketing was a gentleman by the name of Martin Brewer, who used to be at Nike when I was at Oregon, who knew me from there and tried to get me on contract with Nike at one point. He heard I was back in the office, and I'd been there for a while, and he was looking for somebody to take over track and field. And he goes, well, one, you know everybody, you know all the agents, you know all the managers, you know who the athletes are. Most of the people that work in the industry you already know. We want you for the job. And I switched over to sports marketing. So it's been now, I've been there with the brand 16 years, 14 of that has been with sports marketing. And those relationships I had as an athlete are the same ones I have now. The agents that we deal with, Ray Flynn, who was my manager, we have several athletes with him. And that has helped me in progressing in my role, because all these people that I deal with know me from as an athlete. They know what I've been through, and they know that I've been through the process, and it makes it easier when I talk with athletes, when I'm recruiting athletes, because they all want the same thing I do. They want to make an Olympic team. And it's just made life that much easier. If I need something done, I know who to contact. If I have something at Kenya that needs to get done, I know who to contact, because I have a friend there that I met 30 years ago. It's important, it really is. And you learn how to navigate within industry, within the industry as a whole externally, but also internally within the management, how to navigate upstream when something needs to get done. And all that has helped me. And a lot of it's all because of my athletic background.
That's great. I want to see if anybody on the team has questions for you. I know Etta has one that's non-job related, and I'm going to make her ask it again, even if she's rolling her eyes at me. Etta, if you want to jump in with your question, and everybody else, if you've got a question you want to ask Danny, whether it's about his career as a runner or now career post running, feel free to jump in. So Etta, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
My question is, what is your favorite way to consume potatoes, and why?
Ooh, French fries. Sorry, French fries. It's one of those guilty pleasure things. I shouldn't eat as much fried food as I do, but if I see French fries on a menu, I'm going to try them in any way possible.
Yeah. Good answer.
All right. Other questions for Danny?
Follow up on the French fry question.
Yeah.
What do you think are the best French fries in Portland?
Ooh. I don't get out that much anymore. Best French fries in Portland. I'm trying to remember where I've had the little crinkly ones. I don't like the straight ones. So I'm trying to think of where I've had those now. So I don't know. I can't answer that one, but I would say the best French fries would have to be not just the straight cut ones. I like the crinkled ones.
How did you act? Because I was actually thinking when you were talking about being legally blind in one eye, I was thinking, like, how did you learn how to approach barriers safely? Because it is a challenge.
No, it's
a challenge even if you aren't. You have two capable eyes. So,
it's the way I had to learn to adapt, right? So I knew I couldn't see the barrier the same way everybody else could. So when I have to I did a lot of hurdle practice, and so when I'm taking steps in between a hurdle, I can see the barrier. I don't know exactly how close it is. So there'll be times where I'll stutter because I got way too close at that point. But I think I just learned how to estimate the distance as I was running. If you ever watch any of the races that I've ever been in, a lot of times I'm in lane 2 when there's a crowd, so I can see clearer. I can see the barrier clearly, and I need to adjust as much as I can. If there's a crowd, that's more likely when I'm going to fall. I'm either going to run up on somebody, which I did a lot of in practices, or I'm just going to miss the barrier altogether. I'm going to jump too soon. So I think it was just over time. When I was at my junior college, those first 6 races, I didn't know what to expect, and I was hitting them, and I hit them hard. At that point, I wasn't afraid to step on the barrier if I needed to. I learned how to use alternate legs because it's easier than stuttering. And I just had to learn to adapt and adjust on my distance. So sometimes I took off further than others did, and sometimes it was really close. So it was more about just learning to adapt my surrounding and where I was and being able to clearly see it. But it wasn't easy. I mean, there were a couple water jumps where I missed the barrier completely, and it's funny because some people, not very many people notice it, but if something's being handed to me, sometimes I'll reach twice because I miss it the first time. I just grab it real quick, and a lot of people don't really notice that anymore. But that's just something I've had to learn to adapt with. So it's adapt and learn, or fall flat on my face.
I have an Adidas question, kind of.
Yeah.
So the Adidas Puma Rivalry, what's that like working within Adidas? Is that something that's talked about, joked about, anything?
Well, the biggest rival actually is Adidas and Nike now, because they're right across the river. But no, that rivalry started because Adi Dassler, who started Adidas, Adi Dassler, we call it Adidas, and his brother Frank is who started Puma. So they worked together. They had a little falling out. Frank went off and started Puma, and ironically, basically, when you go to Herzogenaurach, you have Adidas here, and right across the street is Puma. That's where their main headquarters is. It's funny because there really isn't as big a rivalry there as it is now with Nike and Adidas, because we're number 1 and number 2. Puma's pretty far down the chain now when it comes to running or overall business. Now in Germany it could be different, because they're right across the street from each other. So I've only been to Germany, our headquarters, once, believe it or not. So you don't see it I don't see it at all, but here, of course, you see it with Nike all the time. Interesting though, with Nike, with the whole controversy with the shoes and stuff with Nike, if you guys have followed that, because now the World Athletics has made parameters making many of the Nike shoes illegal, but making parameters so there's equal footing for all the companies. And one of the key meetings was held in Monaco, where Nike presented their case. Adidas, Puma, New Balance, Asics, and all the other footwear companies all came together in this big meeting and basically shaped what the rules should be, rather than Nike dictating them. And Puma sent their CEO to this meeting. So it was, for them, it was very important, but they were siding 100% with us and all the other companies out there. So I would say the rivalry's there, but probably not as big as the ones here in Portland right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's funny because, we get that a lot. I get people, I've got friends, I'm in groups where some people work at Nike and then me at Adidas, and they're like, oh God, you guys must hate each other. I said, no, actually we have people, I've got friends whose wives work at Nike. It's just a part of the business, and I'm very proud of where I work and who I work for. They've also taken care of me as an athlete, and so my loyalty will always be there. But I will never ever talk ill about any other company, because that just puts you beneath where you should be, in my opinion.
No, it's important to have and value the relationships, even if there is a rivalry there.
Yeah. And the rivalries can be fun. They don't have to be, brutal rivalries. I mean, I remember sitting with one of the Nike guys over at the national championships, and we were both going for the same person. And they had a lot more money on the table than I did, but I had known this person and had a relationship with the coach and the family, as did the other company, but they just felt my presence was different, and so they went with us. And I remember the bar the next night, the gentleman coming up to me and, hey, good one, we battled for it. It was a good fight, but you won out. Congrats, and that's just the way it is. That's how it should be. we all have our positives and our negatives. And I feel that way about competitors too, on the track. You know, some of these guys, we were fiercely competitive on the track, but we're best friends. And that's how it should be. I mean, you've got to have that sense of arrogance and that sense of confidence to be, you know, number one, but that person's going to feel the same way. And when it comes down to being on the track, we both want to win. And we're both going to do everything we can, and we're going to both work hard to win. But then we're also going to support each other when it comes down to it. And that's how I feel like that's how it always should be.
Well, in the absence of any other question, I'll ask, I guess, one final one. Whether it's athletics or business or just kind of any avenue of life, can you talk, I guess, just to close us out here, on the importance of having that chip on your shoulder, and that chip either being you know, something that's motivating you to get something done, or a goal that you've set for yourself and needing to keep striving for that, but just the importance of having that chip.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's important for everything, because, you know, when we look at athletics and you look at how, like I said, you know, you have to have this sense of confidence with you to be that number one in track and field and cross country or whatever sport you choose. It translates to business as well. You got to remember, there's one job, and it's like thousands of people that want to get that job, and so you need to be prepared to work harder than that person to do it. And you need to be prepared to be confident and show confidence about it, because that's what's going to get you a long way. I don't say that by means of you know, sabotaging anybody or stepping on somebody to get to where you want to go, because I think that just comes back at you. And I think people see that. I think there's ways to do it, like I said, with being arrogant and confident, but not to the point where people see it as that bad, because you have to have it. And I think in business, there's a certain chip you have to have on your shoulder to get there, to want to be where you know what your goals are. And that's the thing, goals change. You know, you have to be able to adjust that too. And you got to be able to admit at some points where, okay, maybe this wasn't the right path. Let's try this one. Maybe this is where it's going to be, but ultimately you still want to get up to here. So there may be shifts in that, but I think you have to be confident. You have to be willing to work to get it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Danny. And I appreciate you sharing more about your journey, sharing more about Adidas as the company, and just lessons you've learned along the way.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. Good luck once the season gets rolling. And I hope to be able to get out and watch some as well, since it's here in Portland. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
All righty. Bye.